Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 350 for Monday, May 19th, 2025. This is a podcast all about Minecraft, and it is available across all of the major podcasting platforms, as well as video versions on Spotify and on YouTube. If you're enjoying the show, please consider subscribing wherever you're listening to this. My name is Joel Duggan, and joining me, as always, is my friend Johnny, otherwise known as the Birthday Boy Pixelriffs. Hello, sir.
Hello, I have been the Birthday Boy. That's a little bit of what we've been talking about in the render distance, but if you haven't already supported us on Patreon, you're missing out on some incredible photos of Joel's puppy yoga experience over the weekend. That alone is worth the price of admission, folks. So I do encourage you, if you're interested in supporting the show, to head over to patreon.com/thespawnchunks. You get the extended version of the podcast, what we call the render distance, that gets you an extra 15 to sometimes even 30 minutes of podcast every week. It's usually Joel and I chopping it up about what we've been doing in our lives, but also a little bit of extended conversation about Minecraft often happens in the post-show. We also have monthly hangouts where our patrons can let us know what they've been up to in Minecraft that month. They share screenshots, we look at trends and builds in the community, and generally have a fantastic time talking more about this game that we all love. And the quarterly hangouts are going to be coming up as well. We have a quarterly hangout coming up relatively soon. We still haven't fixed a date for it, but that's where Joel and I go into the behind-the-scenes facts and figures of the podcast. That's where we talk about how the sausage is made. So if you're interested in any of that, and once again, very, very cute puppy pictures, that's over at patreon.com/thespawnchunks.
So, cuteness aside, what have you been doing in Minecraft this week?
I have, as you might expect, been after a much less cute puppy. I am still on the grind for the rideable skeleton wolf. It has been 700 attempts so far, Joel. I am starting to lose my marbles over this. But at this point, sunk cost fallacy has definitely kicked in. I am going after it, and I'm going to get it regardless of how long it takes me. So, obviously, Misadventures has been plagued by just, like, constant going through this. And it's not all about the wolf. It's peripherally about getting me enough currency that I can make a really large land purchase on the server. The gold that we accumulate through doing quests and running dungeons is how we get hold of land that we can build in the RPG world, the overworld. And so I've wanted to get a really large area so I can just not have to think about expanding my base. I can just go ahead and do it. And I'm not really thinking of it as my base. I'm thinking of it as like a feature of the world. Sort of how you are with West Hill, where you wouldn't necessarily describe West Hill as your base. It's more just a project that you're working on, right? Mm-hmm. Something to make the world feel a bit more alive and immersive and everything. So my plan is to build a sky base. I'm probably going to do some stuff on the land as well, because the land is what I'm purchasing technically, but that also includes all of the blocks above it. Like vertical height does not count in the price. It's just a sort of two-dimensional area that you buy, and you get everything above and below it. So I now have enough currency to buy, I think it's about 85,000 coins. It amounts to an area about twice the size of the hole that I was digging on Minecraft SOS, which was about 128 blocks in diameter. So imagine two of those side by side, but I'm not digging it all out to bedrock this time, so you'll be pleased to hear that I'm not going to throw myself into yet another grindy task. But yeah, I can start building in the sky above that area once I've made the purchase, which I should be doing sometime this week. And in the meantime, on streams, I'm going to be working towards getting hold of this skeletal wolf mount so that I can do literally anything else. Chat has been trying to predict what number attempt it's going to happen, so people will just throw sort of 3-digit numbers in the chat and be like, I think it's going to happen on attempt 641 or whatever. Everyone was very disappointed when it didn't happen on attempt 666, because then we were just going to name it The Beast, and it was just going to be, a bit of a joke there. But yeah, we got to 700 this weekend, and still nothing. So I'm still within the average. Apparently the odds of getting hold of this drop are about 1 in 1,000. And we have no idea whether or not looting affects that, but I assume not at this stage. So I'm still on my quest to become the third person on the server to actually own this skeletal wolf, but it is sure taking its time getting to me.
I had a good laugh earlier this week. After one of my streams, I raided Mythical Sausage, and he immediately dove into your quest for the skeletal wolf. And then shared with me and my raiders how long it took him to get the wolf.
8 attempts. It was like fewer than 10. He was the one who got it so that we knew it existed in the first place. But I want to give a credit to the admin team. LD Shadow Lady is the kind of the driving force behind this server. She's been organizing everything. She's been a fantastic admin. Her and Mr. Mad Spy, who's the lead mod developer on it, has been kind of working on systems behind the scenes. But they are on it when it comes to anything we want kind of tweaked and changed, obviously within reason. But I've reported a couple of bugs about the Lost Crypt dungeon that I or chat have noticed since we've been running it. I dropped that in Discord and it's fixed within like 15 minutes most of the time.
Wow.
But Lizzie also just updated the server with a bunch of advancements and stuff, so there are now quests and advancement goals that give us hints about what's going to be happening in some of those dungeons, and there's now an advancement for obtaining the skeleton wolf mount, which on the one hand means that people, even if we hadn't found it by sort of sheer chance that Mythical Sausage got it so early, people know about that stuff before going in, so they know what they're committing to by trying to run the dungeon. They also made it a challenge advancement, which means it plays that fanfare sound effect when you obtain it, kind of similar to when you do Return to Sender on a Ghast, and you hit the Ghast with the fireball for the first time, and it goes ba-ba! And
right.
she was like, I wanted to make sure anybody who gets it knows that they've obtained it. Like, it plays a big fanfare, and you gain XP for it, and then it says, that's at least a sign that you're not going to miss it when it arrives.
Right. Yeah. That would be awful. I don't know if I've ever missed anything like that in a game. I think the closest I can relate is farming drops in like World of Warcraft, going through like dungeons and waiting for the right thing to drop, and because like the boss might drop one piece of epic gear, and it might be for you or your party's DPS or healer. Like it might not be for you, and even if it's for you, at the time, this was back before they had like, I think, individual instanced roles. If there was 3 tanks or something like that, you might not be the one to get it.
Yeah,
like it might go to somebody else. That was before they adjusted things, but it was frustrating on some level, because you'd go through this whole thing and like you wouldn't get the mount that you wanted, or you wouldn't get the piece of gear. But then when you did get it, it became that much more celebratory, it became a bigger deal. So there's a weird balance between the length of time it takes to accomplish something in a video game feeling like highly rewarding and feeling bad, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a line, and I'm wondering where that line is for you. Where is it?
I think I'll probably have crossed the line when I get to about 1,000, because that's the point at which I know I'm getting bad luck from that point onwards. If 1 in 1,000 is the typical odds, but yeah, I don't think I'm going to be deterred by that. And like I said, it's about having secondary objectives, right? So I was getting hold of a ton of gold doing this. I'm also getting hold of loads of bones, because this dungeon is primarily populated with skeleton enemies. Even if the dog doesn't drop the dog item that gives you like access to the mount, the sort of spawn egg, it will still drop some bones as well, so you know that it's dropping something. And yeah, eventually I'll just have a ton of bone blocks, whether I use that for bone meal to farm resources, or if I sell them to other people, or if I build with them myself. I've just got a ton of resources accumulating in the background. I'm also set for mending books for life, I'm pretty sure, because
nice.
Every time you go through, there's a couple of loot chests you can open. Sometimes they have enchanted books. It's usually things like projectile protection and unbreaking and fortune and looting and that kind of stuff. But mending has been on the rota, and I now have probably 2/3 of a chest full of mending books. So I'm going to be set up for a while and potentially selling them to other people who need them on the server. So it's been a decent enterprise so far. I am ready to do something else, but in the meantime, I'm sticking with it.
Nice. Well, I have been making a fair bit of progress in Westhill. Speaking of bases and base development, even though it's not technically my base, I feel like I've had a lot of progress in the last week. I have been focusing on the interior design of the Westhill Keep, and it's not a single stream project. Like, there's basically one stream is like one room. It takes me a couple of hours to kind of get through the details that I want to put out there. So I started with the dining hall library, which had been mostly finished, but needed like tables and chairs from the Tables and Chairs 2 data pack. And I also used the Armor Poser mod, which I don't use all that often. I tend to use the Armor Statues data pack from Vanilla Tweaks, only because I'm more familiar with it. And I was having some issues with Armor Poser crashing early on, but since we've updated to 1.21.4, yes, I'm still on 1.21.4. Armor Poser has been working better. So I use that to put a sword on the wall, but increase the scale of the sword, which is a cool feature of Armor Poser. People might be more familiar with it from Hermitcraft. And so for little decorations like this, hanging stuff on the walls, making swords and things that you want to appear in the world just a little bit larger, it's very, very handy. And so I was able to do that and get that all sorted using a fairly straightforward trick. It's not a mod at all, but that's just putting two copper lightning rods end to end. So like one's upside down and one's right side up, and then putting a candle on the top of it. It looks just like a candle holder.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get away with 2 or 3 candles on the top. 4 really starts to push your luck, because every candle at that point has like a corner on the top of the lightning rod. But 2 and 3, you can kind of get away with it, I think. And so I added some candles in there as well as in the main hall. And I was really happy with the way, and this is, again, mostly from the shaders, but like the complementary reimagined shaders, when light is passing through stained glass in Minecraft, it colors the light. So I've got light blue stained glass in all the windows on the main level of the keep. So this blue light shaft comes through all of the builds. And the colors that I'm using for the decor inside are light blue, cyan. So you got wool, a little bit of terracotta here and there, sometimes some warped planks, depending on what I want to do. So the carpet, quote unquote carpet, in the dining hall is actually like a bunch of blocks and stuff in the floor that make it look like a carpet, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to put like tables and chairs and other things on top of it. And then same thing with the throne room, and it's more like a throne nave or a throne area in the main hall, where again, I'm using the tables and chairs data pack that has some elevated chairs. Like there's a throne that you can make instead of using planks, you use logs in the crafting recipe, and then also carved chairs. And the carved chairs are the same design, same recipe as a regular chair, but instead of using planks, you used stripped logs. And so that gives you like a different kind of back. If you put carpet on them, then it changes the cushion color of the throne. And so what I did is I used some of the new pale oak for a white throne and a white, I guess, I'm not sure what you want to call it, like magistrates, or like the people that might sit next to and advise the ruler of this area. So there's 2 lesser chairs next to the main chair where obviously the boss Applesauce would sit. And I was experimenting around with a table that had some heads and different things on it. So the mini blocks data pack from Vanilla Tweaks, I was putting amethyst and I think some lapis on a table as like maybe some display of jewels or gems or something. Ultimately, I ended up getting rid of it. It made for a cool screenshot, but after a while, I didn't feel like it made a lot of sense. So I got rid of it, and then I added in more of those candles around to just kind of light up the place. And I had forgot that I did this, but the reason why I decided to go with the pale oak is that when the pale oak first came into the game, I actually returned to the main hall and added some stripped pale oak accents in the walls. So white is kind of like the highlight color. So the way that I'm approaching the interior design of any kind of the main hall areas is light blue / cyan are your 2 main colors. And then for highlight colors, I'm using white or navy blue, like the dark blue stuff. Not a lot of navy blue happening, but it's there in little bits. And when I moved into the main hall, I started decorating the hearth. And so that is where I also used the armor poser, again, to increase the scale, but also allow me to put shields up above on the mantle. So I used the navy blue and the cyan gradients on a banner, as well as the cross pattern in white, kind of a standard medieval looking shield. And I think someone said it was very close to Finland's flag in terms of the I guess color patterns of it. And then same idea as the thrones, to kind of echo that design. I had one main shield that was more lightly colored, and then I had 2 lesser, like darker colored shields to the left and right of it, kind of putting that up above the mantle. And again, using the armor poser to get the shield and the armor stand to 1.25x scale, so it's a little bit bigger. And also allows you to put the shield on a wall and kind of like hang it there, so it looks like it's hung as a piece of like decor, as you'd see in a lot of movies where like coat of arms or shields or swords would just be like hung on the wall for design and decoration. And so I finished up the mantle, and then I hung some banners on the left and right of the main door. And again, just white and cyan with different highlights. I think I used like a diamonds and like a couple of different layers to get like a thin white line across the bottom of the banner. Hung 2 banners together. I typically don't use banners very much inside because they tend to blow around in the wind that doesn't exist indoors. But next to these pillars next to the door, you really don't see them. They're more of like a peripheral flash of color as you exit the building. So it's not like you're not sideways to them, so you're not going to see them move back and forth. Not like curtains. If I had hung curtains along the main hall, you'd see those move back and forth because you'd be running perpendicular to them. So this one, you're running straight at them, so you don't really notice it very much at all, which was great. So that was my first part of the week, was focused on the main hall in the keep.
I really like the use of shields above the fireplace. I think that's obviously something that you would see in any kind of like medieval style build like this, and I think especially if you can pose them in a way that makes them a bit more visible and like fill up the space some, instead of just being stuck with whatever default armor stand position that you get. I think that's a really neat way of using them, so that they're aligned at least and they look like they're up on a wall. I think it's nice also that you've got a design that you can be happy with on a shield, because I know shields still do that thing where they shrink the design by a pixel, and so if you wanted to do anything more complicated with the banners of Westhill, then unfortunately you'd be out of luck. But I think, yeah, just having the kind of cross design on there makes a whole lot of sense, and I think it feels very medieval inherently. A lot of that early sort of heraldry, the sort of the classic stuff, is all fairly simple that way, so I think it makes a lot of sense to have that. And yeah, I think the uniformity of colors that you've got throughout this, the kind of theming, works super well. Like I think the throne room especially, I think that's really fun. The fact that you've got some furniture that works with the accents in the walls and everything can kind of tie together, it helps it feel very kind of official and regal, like the lord or king or whoever it would be would have those colors on their kind of bannerman's armor and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's a great way of tying the whole thing together, and it looks like the interior of this is coming together very well. Love the library as well. The chiseled bookshelves being everywhere also gives that kind of used feeling to the space, because it's not all completely uniform bookshelves everywhere, and I think that's a really nice touch to that area.
Thanks, man. It's been a lot of fun, and I was looking at adding some different colors in the lights too, because of course the soul lantern has that color matching, but it ended up being a little bit dim. Like it just didn't feel quite right, and so that's why I went with like candles to make it look like that's where the light's coming from. But then obviously I had a lot of chandeliers and stuff up in the top as well. But yeah, I really wanted to try to add like accents and color, and then not end up making a huge pile of work for myself. Like this is a large room, like it's a good 20 or 30 blocks long, and so I didn't want to have like a carpet that stretched the whole thing. The floor has got a design in it, so like I didn't want to cover that up with too much. So it really became more of like focusing on different areas, like having one focal point, like the hearth in the main hall, the door at the front, the throne room at the back, and then off to the side, when you wander through the little access hallway, you get to the library as well. And the library faces east, so like in the morning, after you sleep in Minecraft, the sun comes in those windows, and it's a really cool vibe to that side of the keep. And then later in the week, I moved on to the kitchen. So I wanted the space to feel functional as well. So right off the main hall, there's like a large kitchen, and it's been there forever. And I had to redo it because, of course, the tables and chairs but the data pack needed to get updated. So I moved a bunch of things around, and it was a good mix of like vanilla techniques, but also getting in some of the data pack. So obviously the tables and chairs are not vanilla, but things like a cauldron by the window to wash the dishes, putting chests, trapdoors, and snow layers up on a shelf where you can only see the edge of the trapdoor. It's a birch trapdoor, so it looks kind of like a tray, even though it is a table. But putting a oak pressure plate on any kind of flat surface sort of looks like a cutting board. The armor statue trick sort of things like putting a bone in a piece of nether rack so it looks like a big hunk of meat.
I was going to comment on that. It looks so good in the screenshot. It's like this big like ham hock kind of thing. It kind of reminds me of the symbols for hunger points in Minecraft, like how they're kind of the chicken leg kind of look to them. It's 100% that. That's really, really good.
Thanks. Yeah, it was definitely one of those like beast on a stick, moments where you're kind of going for like the Flintstones cartoon.
Yeah, the Fred Flintstone like dinosaur steak kind of situation. Yeah,
100%. Yeah. And then I was using the mini blocks again. Surprisingly, just a regular jungle log sort of looks like a seasoned cooked hunk of meat hanging on a chain. That kind of stuff is very, very handy. And then I ran into some lighting problems where like the whole place was spawn proof, but it was still very, very dark. And one of the things that I was doing in the floor And thankfully, I had the foresight to not have a single block floor level, because this is above like the basement, but the basement is far enough down where I've got 3 or 4 blocks between like the basement ceiling and the next floor up. So we can have some design and some depth in the ceiling below, but I can also have some textures and stuff in the floor and not have it be a problem. So because it's a spruce floor, I was using upside down barrels, spruce trapdoors, stripped spruce logs, and spruce planks for the texture. And in some of the dark corners, I added an extra spruce trapdoor and then buried like 3 or 4 candles underneath the floor, just to try and get that light level from like 2 up to like a 4 or 5, like just enough that you can see like a door in the corner, because one of the doors leads to the library, the other one leads to a staircase that goes upstairs and all that kind of stuff. So it was a fun little way to kind of play around with some vanilla tricks that had there's no mods or anything to do that. It's just, little things that I've picked up over the years. And we're not done. Like, we still have 2 floors left. So there's an upper floor where there's like a barracks and a couple of other like bedroom areas I have to do. I've got to do the main kind of like bedroom, wherever the person that sits in that throne sleeps. That's up in the tower, and that's a pretty big space. But again, like, now that I've got that color theming, it's probably going to come together a lot nicer, right? Like, I can do a bed, probably put like a footer at the bed with like maybe some warped wood slabs to kind of look like a teal or a cyan ottoman, or like something to kind of give those colors an echo upstairs. And the kitchen quarters are actually done as well, but that was really simple. Like, there's basically people that would work in the kitchen. All the beds are the same color. There's a couple candles in the fireplace and a table. Like, it's just very, very basic. So the rest of it should come together fairly quickly. I think the largest part of this keep rebuild is going to be the basement, which I still have plans to turn into a distillery, but currently it's my storage. So I've got bulk storage, and I've got a wall of shulker boxes that's all organized and all that kind of stuff. And moving that somewhere else is going to be tricky. So I'm trying to get all of the stuff inside of West Hill finished, where it makes sense to have my central storage at the basement of the keep very close by. And then when I start to do things outside of West Hill to finish up the area, I can move the storage into, I think I'm going to put it in the crypt under the graveyard. And so it's kind of out of the way, but I'm not going to lose all the storage. I just have to move it. So there's going to be a tedium stream where I'm just like emptying double chests of dirt and stone and things and moving them across the way. I may end up doing like an end run where I'm getting some shulker boxes, some extra shulker boxes, to make that a little bit less painful. So we'll see if there's a little bit of a break in the building and a little adventure to go get some extra shulker boxes in between. But that's the plan. I can sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel as far as the main town of West Hill is. And now that I see it, I'm kind of like, I can feel my foot going heavier on the gas. Like, I want to finish this up. Like, let's just kind of power through and have some fun with it. And I do like these details. Like, it's one of my favorite things about allowing as a group the server to go into like vanilla plus territory with a couple of quality of life mods, a couple of decorative mods that just allow you to add these little details that are just not possible in vanilla Minecraft. And I find it really helps my immersion.
For sure. One thing, if you've got any spare wall space, that I will recommend, that I reminded myself of on Misadventures as I was trying to figure out a couple more details for my Sky Pirate Roost, is that the new paintings from 1.21 are genuinely pretty good in some cases for decorating larger spaces like this. There are a few new canvas sizes, and there are a couple of paintings that, even though a lot of the Minecraft paintings are kind of silly, right, they've got a little bit of like video game references in. There was the one that's got like an owl and a bunch of lemons that probably wouldn't fit in West Hill. But tides, backyard, finding, and I think the one, the like massive 4x4 one called Orb, those are all pretty like chill as far as things that would look good in a medieval space without having some kind of obvious video game reference, or like even the skull on fire thing seems a little bit too cartoonish and extreme, right? Like, I think a bunch of those paintings, there's still some merit to them that, you know, they look a little bit more at home in that kind of surroundings. So if you find yourself lacking for, you know, decorations for a larger wall, I do recommend looking into some of those, because I forget now that paintings have been expanded so much in 1.21, but there's nearly double the amount that there were before, and a lot of them are larger and unconventional sizes compared to what we were used to. So I think maybe worth looking into if you've got a spare wall somewhere in the West Hill Keep.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that's definitely on my list, especially like above the bed of like the magistrate or whoever rules the town, right? Like, that would make a good accent. I would also have to look into regional resource packs, because some of my paintings, not the new ones, but some of the older ones from like 3 or 4 years ago, have been retextured. I took some art from my friend
Right.
Britt, and I put that into they're abstract paintings, and so they work really well in the modern city, just as like nondescript kind of like art on the wall, kind of like the stuff that you'd see at Starbucks.
Yeah, like coffee shop art kind of stuff. Yeah.
Her stuff is better than that, but like it's
Yeah.
the sort of like undistracting vibe that you get from it. And so that also would not work in a medieval setting, and I want to make sure that I've not overridden any of the ones that would. So I've got to go and double check what those are before I get into the paintings. But yeah, there's also some of the smaller 1x1 paintings I think would be good, like kind of going on the walls as you go up the stairs. Like the stairwells feel pretty barren right now. And so I'm kind of remembering, like, I mean, this is a really extreme example, but the stairwell in Hogwarts, there's just paintings everywhere.
Yeah.
And it makes that space feel better than just like an empty stairwell. And so I think that's something that I want to try to do here. Even though the stairwell in the keep is not giant, it is still a double wide stairwell, so the walls have enough kind of space to do at least a 1x1. In some places it might even like a 2x1, like one of the long thinner paintings might work out as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great place to put them, like stately homes, castles, that kind of stuff. Like it's all going to have like a gallery somewhere, or like, you know, some kind of portrait of somebody up on a wall, and replacing that with a landscape in a Minecraft build is pretty apropos, I think. So yeah, it's worth looking into for sure.
Well, looking into the news, we have a new snapshot this week. Java Edition Snapshot 25W20A was published on Tuesday, May 13th. This week, we are releasing the final features from this year's second drop. Today's snapshot brings craftable saddles, as well as some stunning tracks, courtesy of Amos Rody. And we have also added an option to show which song is currently playing in-game in the pause menu. New features in 25W20A. Added new music tracks, Below and Above, Broken Clocks, Fireflies, Lilypad, and O's Piano, all composed by Amos Rody. These new tracks play in cherry groves, forests, deserts, groves, and lush cave biomes. They will also play in the main menu screen. A new music disc with the track Tears by Amos Rody will now drop from a Ghast when a player kills it by deflecting a fireball back at it. Saddles have now been made craftable and shearable. They can now be crafted in a 3x3 crafting grid with 3 leather and 1 iron ingot. This recipe unlocks when a player picks up their first leather. Saddles, horse armor, harness, and carpets can now be removed from mobs using shears. They cannot be removed using shears while the mob has a rider or while the player is crouching, although they can still be removed from the inventory UI if the mob has one. Saddles cannot be removed from ravagers using shears. Dispensers with shears cannot remove saddles, horse armor, harness, or carpets equipped on mobs, and some loot tables which previously contained saddles have had those saddles removed and replaced with a 1-5 leather. A new menu panorama has also been added to the title screen. Some changes in 25W20A. Fog is now applied to the 3D HUD elements such as first-person player hands and items in hands. A fix to MC3697. TNT submerged in water can destroy item frames, paintings, armor stands, and other similar entities has been partially reverted. Decorative hanging entities such as paintings and item frames are now immune to explosions from submerged TNT, while items and armor stands are once again vulnerable to them. Rain and thunder is somewhat less foggy now. Rain fog effects interiors less. The dried Ghast block is no longer something you can break when water flows into it. Changes to music and sound. Music now plays even when the game is paused. Added an option to the music and sound settings that allow players to change how frequently music plays while in a game world. Added an option in the music and sound settings that enables music toast to be shown wherever a song is playing. With this option enabled, that song that is currently playing will be set at all times in the top left corner of the in-game pause menu. Added the Realms logo to the Realms loading screens. Added region information when connecting to a realm. Some technical changes in 25W20A. The data pack version is now 77. Among other things, this adds an experimental feature allowing data pack creators to display dialog boxes to the player, allowing for a header with a title and a warning button, body elements such as labels, inputs, buttons, and submit actions, which is scrollable if needed, an optional footer which contains main buttons and submit actions. A developer's note: dialogues are not supposed to be fully described in any in-game UI, but just allow custom content to display simple messages and get input from users. This feature is intentionally limited to match that use case. The resource pack version is now 61. This simply adds sprites for the music notes, icons, and the now playing toast that can appear if you enable that from the music sound settings. Some fixed bugs of note in 25W20A. Horse temporarily stuck in jump animation if dismounted. Sound/song stops playing after adjusting the volume. Sounds don't pause when the game pause is in some UI screens. Music never turns on when it's toggled in the menu. TNT touching water will destroy blocks and damage entities, but will ignore decorative entities. Happy Ghast saddle model doesn't change when a lead is broken by exceeding the max range, and several fixes to fog affecting or not affecting certain blocks and items. For a full list of the technical details in this snapshot, visit the Minecraft.net changelog linked in our show notes at thespawnchunks.com.
Another thing you'll find on Minecraft.net this week is an announcement that the Minecraft movie is now available digitally. After a very successful time in cinemas where it amassed a worldwide box office of over $900 million, a Minecraft movie is now available for home viewing on digital platforms in a variety of countries. The article on Minecraft.net includes a link which will direct you to which streaming or video-on-demand services have the movie available for you to watch, and it also outlines where you can still find a Minecraft movie DLC and add-ons for Bedrock Edition if you're still keen to find those. So once again, we'll have a link to that in our show notes over at Minecraft.net.
So I was thinking that the movie was going to hit $1 billion before it moved to digital, but they seem to be kind of bridging that gap. Do you think that it'll hit $1 billion?
I don't know if it's still theatrically available locally to me, and so I'm not sure if it's left theaters entirely at this stage, but it's had a phenomenal run for a video game adaptation for sure. And so I think regardless of whether they wanted to aim for $1 billion or not, they have far exceeded, I think, most people's expectations for how well this movie was going to do. I don't know what sort of type of like industry thresholds they typically set. If they wanted to keep it in theaters for longer, they probably could. But it's just about like, you know, whether it's worth the cost of having the movie out there and you know, what presumably the distributors have to pay the theaters in order to keep it screening there. So yeah, who knows? I think it's going to be just as successful digitally as it was in cinemas, perhaps even more so, because I'm sure parents who are interested in seeing the movie without the sort of disruptive cinema going experience that some people were not too keen on, or just people whose kids love the movie so much in theaters that they want to see it again digitally, like it's going to get a ton of rentals, a ton of purchases, and I imagine if there's a physical release happening at some stage, then that'll see a fair amount of traffic as well. So I think overall it's still a phenomenal success for Minecraft as a brand that the movie has done this well, and hopefully it sort of cycles more people back into playing the game if they weren't already, and at least has tuned in a few parents to understanding what on earth is going on in their kids' brains the rest of the time.
So it is the number 2 highest grossing video game movie of all time. Behind
what's the first?
Super Mario Brothers.
Right, okay, yeah. Did
And
that make $1 billion? Did that like hit $1 billion?
1.3.
Wow.
Yeah. So 1.3 for Super Mario Brothers, 917 million currently for Minecraft movie. The third place is quite far behind. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is at 490,000.
Yeah.
Pokemon Detective Pikachu is number 4 at 450, and Warcraft is at 439,000. So still under $500 million for those two. The highest grossing movie of all time is Avatar at 2.9 billion. So the fact that Minecraft, a video game movie, is coming up on $1 billion, which is a third of a movie that has a much broader audience appeal, I think is saying something. I'm actually a little bit surprised. I looked this up on Wiki thinking that the Minecraft movie was going to be number 1 purely on the popularity of Minecraft, but I guess you got to give a nod to Super Mario Brothers, the movie, being a little bit more accessible as a fully animated film, but then also Super Mario Brothers has just been around for twice as long. You know, in terms of like the number of people that would be fans that would know about Super Mario Brothers that would go to the movie. I feel like there's just a broader audience. Like you could take your kids to Super Mario Bros, but you as an adult would have also played that. Whereas I think that, yes, there's a chance that you've played Minecraft with your kids, but I'm sure there was a lot of parents that have never touched Minecraft that were taking their kids to go see Minecraft. And so I think there would be a higher adult audience for the Super Mario Brothers movie. But either way, I liked it. I liked the Super Mario Brothers movie. I'm glad that it did so well.
Yeah. And for anybody keeping track at home and who's only used to Minecraft maths, I've just done the calculations for you, and 900 million or 917 million US dollars is about 14.3 million stacks of US dollars. So I think as far as taking it out of theaters, I think they should have let it get to like whatever the next multiple of 64 was, just to be on the safe side. But no, overall, I think they've done a fantastic job of it, and I'm sure it will continue to be successful digitally. Let's move on to talk about the snapshot, because I think a couple of subtle changes in this one, but big things as far as community requested features, craftable saddles being the main one.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was an inevitability, really, for me. I think it was like, I sort of joked around at the time. I was like, at last, the update that makes leather workers even more redundant. But those villagers aside and jokes aside, I think this change was going to be on most players' minds once Ghast harnesses became a craftable thing, because, of course, you know, it was really strange that we could craft this fairly complex thing to fly a Ghast around the skies with that includes like a pair of goggles that flip down, but we can't create a saddle that helps you ride a horse. You know, it seems like a sort of oversight in the whole notion of crafting, and it makes perfect sense that it was possible for us to craft it now. I think maybe the thing that was holding it back was them trying to figure out, well, what do we make the crafting recipe? Like, how do we make this both, you know, the shape-wise feels fairly intuitive, and material cost-wise, how does that all kind of figure out? And I think the crafting recipe is just like an inverted V shape of leather and then an iron ingot in the center, so sort of to act as the stirrup part, I guess. And that makes perfect sense to me. I don't think we need to overthink it too much, but the thing I'm most pleased about with this change is that we can now universally remove saddles from mobs using shears. The same way that you remove wolf armor and a couple of other things that you can shear off of animals like that, you can do that with, I think, the Ghast harness as well. And so that's just now a universal function of shears. If there's, you know, a saddle on something that doesn't have a UI that you could go into and take it off, like pigs and striders being the main ones, you no longer have to slaughter them to get the saddle back. So right. I think that's a really positive change, especially for people who are more keen on like rewarding their mounts for all of the hard work they've done transporting them across lava, and still want to get the saddle back so that they can pick another strider and go out in a different direction.
I like that crafting a saddle pushes using horses for transportation earlier in the game, because there's a really good chance that you're going to see a horse before you find a saddle in a random chest somewhere.
Almost certainly, yeah. Like, if you've got to go to like a dungeon, or, I mean, ancient cities have them, but I don't think anyone's going that deep. I tend to find them a lot of the time in nether fortresses, because I'm not using horses for overworld transport much, but I am using striders for nether transport in fresh worlds. And so a nether fortress being like relatively close by, there's usually a saddle in one of those chests and horse armor and things like that. But otherwise, yeah, you've got to find a dungeon, you've got to find a leather worker, you got to find a couple of the rarer structures that are out there in the world. It's actually pretty difficult to get hold of a saddle in early game. I think fishing is probably the most straightforward way, and that's just the most boring way of doing it, because you're standing there for ages waiting for a saddle to come up.
Yeah, and I don't know that fishing is all that intuitive early game either. Like, maybe if you've played a lot of survival games and you think in Minecraft, well, maybe I can fish, but I feel like it's not quite as obvious as you know, seeing a horse and the knowledge of riding a horse in a medieval kind of themed survival game as far as Minecraft goes. So yeah, I'm happy to see it. I think the crafting recipe makes sense too, like having a little bit of iron in there. Like, it just kind of puts it into that, like, you've got to have this kind of tool, you know, to have iron and having been smelting in order to be able to unlock it. I think it makes a lot of sense. I was surprised that they didn't allow dispensers to use the shears to remove the saddles. There's a level of gameplay there I think kind of fun, like bringing your horse into what is essentially like a car park or a car wash and having it automatically remove the saddle for you. I don't know why you'd want to do that. It could be just like a fun RP thing, but it seemed not restrictive, but it kind of feels weird, because you can use shears for other things in a dispenser, like shearing sheep, for example, but you can't use it to remove saddles. So I don't know what the reasoning is behind that, whether it's just like a gameplay function. Maybe it gets wonky when a dispenser is using shears on a saddled animal that has an inventory. Like maybe that's a problem. I don't know.
Or a passenger. I think it could be the fact that you're riding it, and maybe
Fair.
that, because like you can't ride a horse without a saddle. It would just change the way the horse, like you can sit on it, but then you can't control the direction of the horse.
Right.
And so I think that just leads to so much fumbling around that way you can't like trap somebody, so if they're riding a horse through an area, they lose control of the horse or something.
Yeah.
I think there might be a few technical reasons for it as well, but yeah, I expect inventory is one also. And there's just a couple of things where with a llama having like a carpet and also a saddle, it's like which one does it shear first? There's like an update order to it and that kind of thing. So I think maybe too many variables at play there, and it just made sense to just prevent them from doing that, just so shears could be stuck to shearing sheep and a couple of other functions in dispensers.
Yeah, I like that you don't have to kill the animals. Well, if like a strider or a pig, as you mentioned, like I think that's great. I get to give for people that want to keep the pig, or have the pig as a pet with a saddle, like whatever that RP is, like to not have to remove the pig to get the saddle back. Yeah, especially because at the time saddles weren't craftable. So like having a saddle, like I have saddles in my world that I found early on that I've never used, but like I'm not getting rid of them because at the time you just didn't know when you're going to find another one.
Mm-hmm. How much time do you spend in the Nether generally?
These days, not very much. When I was building the Nether, for like wither skeleton farms and some decorative stuff, a lot more. But these days, it's more of just a through line to get to fast travel around the main area, like Dartmouth Meadows and Iron Farm and stuff like that. Or
so you're usually in like a Nether hub environment, right? Yeah,
hub environment. The only thing that's we'll call it precarious, even though at the level that we have in the game, it's not that bad, is the long cobblestone road to the gold farm where I repair all my gear, which is I have to rethink because that's not going to work the same anymore. And even then, most of the time I just fly it, But it's one of those like non-decorated cobblestone walls. You run it as long as you don't move, as long as you don't stop. Even if a ghast shoots you, it's not going to hurt you or the path. You can just go. Mm-hmm. And so that's really the amount of time I spend in the Nether these days.
So you don't tend to get the like return to sender, like deflect a fireball at a ghast very often?
No.
Because I was thinking the amount I do that when I'm just like traveling around looking for stuff in the Nether, if I'm looking for a bastion remnant or a new Nether fortress or something, I typically don't shoot ghasts with arrows all that much. Like I'll do it occasionally if I'm building something important and I don't want a ghast to try and fireball me and have the possibility of missing. But half the time when I start shooting at a ghast, like it's already shooting at me and the arrow just deflects the fireball at range instead of having to do it like with a swipe of the sword melee fashion. So I feel like I'm going to have so much of that music disc given the way I typically play. Like I'm just going to be chasing ghasts around in order to get hold of it. But like half of them are just going to end up dropping into lava, I expect. But I think I'm going to end up with a fair few of the new Tears music disc, which I'm not complaining about because having listened to the soundtrack, it's on Spotify now for anybody who's curious. There is a link to the Spotify in another article on Minecraft.net. You can probably find it pretty easily just by searching, but the composer's name, Amos Rody, is a great way to find it. You can also search for Minecraft, and it's still listed there as, I think, 2025 gameplay drop 2 or something. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if they're going to change it when the update officially has a name, but it feels, I understand why they're doing it, but it feels really weird when we don't know the name of something ahead of time, or the name isn't announced at the same time that other stuff like a soundtrack is announced for it. But I had a listen earlier, and I'm pretty happy with all of these tracks. Like, I have no complaints about any of them. Did you get a chance to listen to these yet?
I did, yeah. I got through most of it, and I mean, again, I liked it. I thought it was very pleasant, in the background as I was prepping notes for the show this morning. And the only thing that I would say, and this is might be just like a little bit of nostalgia / the fact that I don't have the music going when I'm in game, in that it doesn't remind me of Minecraft. Like it doesn't sound much like the tracks that I think a lot of us would associate with Minecraft, which I'm not even familiar enough with to like name them. But the original album I've listened to a couple of times, and I did used to play it like when I did like a Lego stream or whatever. And there's a few tracks that definitely are like reminiscent of like my first days in a meadow, in Minecraft, the stuff that plays, the piano stuff, watching Paul Soares Jr. when I was learning how to play Minecraft back in the day, that kind of stuff. but I do like them. And in a lot of ways, I think they also help modernize Minecraft. Like it feels like the kind of cozy survival, exploratory crafting games that I've played outside of Minecraft. But then this also it does, yeah, like it feels like it fits. But I've not had any kind of experience with them in game to tie them to Minecraft for me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But I do like them. I think they're very pretty.
I think they're great, and I think I agree with you that none of them feel like they're going to be the Minecraft theme song in the same way that like Hagstrom from Minecraft Volume Alpha is, like the sort of music box thing that feels like the first time the sun rises over a plains biome and you hear it and you're like, oh, okay, I'm home, this is it. Like that's, I think, everyone's sort of core Minecraft memory, especially if you played Minecraft before the new soundtracks, the new composers started coming in from the Nether update onwards. But Amos Rody is a composer whose previous video game credits include the Kingdom games, Kingdom New Lands, Kingdom 2 Crowns. People are probably familiar with those, but they're kind of like pixel art games, but very well received. Citizen Sleeper, The Wild at Heart, and Cloud Gardens, which is a game I've played ages and ages ago, back when it first came out. It's just a very kind of peaceful, kind of clicking around and growing over some like junk heaps and stuff with plants, and just kind of propagating the area and making these little like dioramas of plants. And that was a very peaceful kind of vibe to it, and I think this sort of follows on from that in that ambient sandboxy kind of way. And so I think Roddy is a composer who really suits this style of game. Having had a quick listen through it, Below and Above, I think, is probably my favorite of them. It feels like C418's work in the amount of like texture and layers of instruments and this sort of room to breathe compositional style where you're not like hearing a beat in the background that's constantly like driving you forward and you're nodding your head to it. It's a bit more like little musical phrases and then a little stretch of quiet and then another phrase will kind of bubble up in it. The synth instrumentation doesn't sound quite as similar as C418 stuff. It reminds me a bit more of Disaster Piece's work on Hyperlight Drifter, where the synths contrast with the piano more than like add to it, but in like a really nice way that I think layers super well. That's the standout for me. Tears is the new music disc, the one that you get from the Ghast, and that feels like a ghost version of Pig Step to me. It kind of feels like that's the one that, you know, you're going to bop your head to it. And I think lately they've been turning the music discs into like almost the in-world pop songs, and it's clearly not something that's going to chart in the real world, and it's all instrumental. But I do think like Tears, Creator, Pig Step, Relic, like all of those are tracks that feel like very different from the ambient music you're hearing the rest of the time. The music disc is something that you put on in the game intentionally rather than it just being part of the soundtrack that cycles through as you play. And so I think those are like the pop hits of the Minecraft world in a sense. And so Tears kind of like follows along with that formula. But yeah, I recommend listening to any of these. I had thoughts on all of them, but I don't think we want to get like too deep divey into the music side of things. I just think, yeah, it feels interesting to introduce another composer when we've had contributions from 3 other composers aside from the main body of the soundtrack being C418's work. And I think Amos Rody like slots into all of that super well. I think he's done a fantastic job of this so far, and I'm curious if we get more contributions from him in future.
You're probably going to be more up on this than I am because I no longer make edited YouTube content. One of the reasons I stopped listening to music in-game while I was playing is because when I was making edited episodes, if you had music playing in the background, it would get choppy and chopped up as you go take different takes and do different things. But now that all of the stuff I put on YouTube are VODs, which are just straight, you know, gameplay without any editing, other than like removing my starting soon screen, I'm curious as to whether the copyright on all of the new music that's added to Minecraft is getting any false positives, because one of the banes of my existence on my VODs is some of the break music I used to use in some of my older VODs was royalty free, but then somebody puts out a video, claims a copyright on their video, and have also used royalty free music in it, and then YouTube thinks that they own the copyright to the royalty free music that's in your video, and you get flagged, and you have to then well, I mean, there's not a big deal. You just remove for me, I just remove the track because it's on a break screen. It's not going to cause any real issues, but then that video doesn't have any earning potential until you fix it. And so, as someone that does a lot of edited videos on YouTube, have you noticed any issues with new music when you go to share them, or is it still kind of like Minecraft says that they're royalty free for Minecraft use, but then YouTube doesn't seem to agree?
Yeah, so as far as the user license agreement goes for Minecraft, you have full permission to use Minecraft soundtrack in creation of content related to Minecraft. Like they're totally fine with that. I think it may even be possible to use it elsewhere if you're just playing it in the background while you're doing something else. Don't quote me on that, but I do think it's like generally speaking, the Minecraft soundtrack is available for creators to use without any kind of copyright issues or royalties going to Mojang. I think the only problem is that the copyright system on YouTube has been historically easy for people to abuse. People who aren't the rights owners to the music can still make claims on it in certain circumstances. To their credit, Mojang has been very good at, when creators flag stuff like that to them, taking care of it and getting any false claims sorted out. So I have not encountered any of that stuff myself. There was an issue around Pig Step for a while, which Lena Raine actually spoke out about herself on Twitter, I think, at the time, and just said, like, I'm not responsible for any of these claims happening. I'm trying to get it resolved. Please have patience. Sorry for any inconvenience. It's sort of out of my hands. But yeah, like it seems like the composers that Mojang are working with right now have, their full blessing to, get their work out into creators' hands and creators to be able to use it however they want to. So, I don't think that should be an issue. And if it is, I think Mojang is at least practiced at this point in making sure they can take care of those false claims if and when they happen.
I ask because recently I had to go through a bunch of Spotify claims on the music that I use for the Citadel Cafe, and it seemed like it was an internal software error, and I only had to do 100 claims out of the near 500 episodes that I have of the Citadel Cafe, having used the same theme music for 13 years.
Yeah.
Like you said, with Lena Raine, Kevin MacLeod, who is the composer of the music, had put out a statement to the people that had downloaded his stuff saying, like, I know this is an issue. I'm working with Spotify to try and rectify it. If you encounter a flag, here's the process. You flag it as, I have the right to this music. You say, me as the composer, and it'll try to redirect Spotify to whatever he's working with on the back end of Spotify to say, like, oh, yes, that's an error. It felt very much like an internal server error or something where someone caught it, but not before it did, like a blanket kind of like warning across probably several thousand podcasts that use his music. And so, we didn't get anything because, of course, the music we use on the Spawn Chunks is composed by you, not like a wide royalty-free library. So we haven't run into any errors like that. So hopefully that kind of stuff will be less and less, because I know when I was watching Exumavoid's video about the music, he was going to run them on his second channel just in case. Like that was his kind of like comment of caution, just like yours. He was like, don't quote me on it, and I'm not going to take the risk. So if you want to go listen to it, you can go listen to it on like his second channel, which is where he posts VODs and things like that. And he also brought up the title, and I think it's an interesting conversation. And a note that he mentioned in his video, which was the release of the album could have been a fun way to drop the name.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
Of the drop, right? And I think that's a good way to put it, because as you said, it is currently listed as Minecraft Game Drop 2 -2025 original game soundtrack. So not the most snappy title, despite the tracks all having really interesting titles like O's Piano and Broken Clocks and some really fun stuff in there. And I like that they have like a Fireflies one with recent updates. Like this, it's cool. But yeah, I'm curious as to what this update is actually going to be called.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting considering that the last update of 2024 was called the Winter Drop, and then we thought of the previous one, which ended up being named Spring to Life, as the Spring 2025 drop, and now we have 2025 Drop 2. So they're not specifying a season anymore, even though I assume it's going to come out in summer. It's probably going to be like a June or July release to coincide with school holidays. And they have said, the developer's note at the top of the changelog article said, we're feature complete at this point, and it's just going to be like bugs from this point onwards, and a couple of tweaks and changes probably still in the works, maybe rendering engine stuff. But either way, they keep changing the nomenclature for how they're classifying things before the stuff has a formal name. And so once again, they're not beating the allegations when it comes to things being hard to keep track of now that they've got gameplay drops and major and minor updates and like all of the nitty-gritty of that. So hopefully things will settle down a little bit and we'll have a more consistent way of referring to these things. But yeah, I'm genuinely hoping that they come to a consensus on that at some stage. In the meantime, we should probably move on into some listener email, yeah?
Yeah, sounds like a really good idea, seeing as this is the email chunk mail dispenser episode. So once a month, we forego the main discussion and try to pump out a few extra emails from our listeners because we do get so many, which we really, really appreciate. And if you would like to send an email to the show, the address is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. Please keep your emails short to the point if you can. It does help us include them in the episode, as well as indicate if you are a patron or not, because it's nice for us to give a thank you to folks that write in if they're part of our membership on Patreon. And Johnny is going to read the first one.
Yes, conveniently enough, this one is, the subject line is a Minecraft music show, and the correspondent here is Dead Crusader. Dear Johnny and Joel, in the episode with Eloise, I hope you're feeling better by now, Joel, one of the topics of discussion was in what other ways could Mojang bring new Minecraft experiences to the fan base? With the new soundtrack changes for the summer drop, I remembered that, at least to me, the music plays a huge part in my love for the game in a way that I didn't see totally reflected in the movie's soundtrack. What if Mojang prepared a world tour of music shows with the game's soundtrack? What tracks would you like to hear live in a concert hall? Keep up your amazing work. Best regards. Dead Crusader was impaled on a stalagmite, too distracted listening to Infinite Amethyst.
I'm going to defer to Johnny for a lot of this because I'm not familiar enough with the Minecraft soundtrack to know pieces by name. However, I do enjoy a live orchestral concert. And one of the things that kind of popped into my mind was something, either a large orchestra presenting some Minecraft music, or something smaller, like maybe something more accessible, like a 4-string quartet doing a small ensemble adaptation of some of their favorite Minecraft tracks. You could also see a small screen showcasing serenic, panoramics of the overworld, or like creepy nether caverns if it was like a Halloween and nether themed presentation for something. At the same time, I would also enjoy going to something like that without a screen. Like, I think it'd be kind of nice just to go to enjoy the music. But I've been to some of those before where it's been like adaptations of pop music by like Taylor Swift and like a string quartet, and it was really enjoyable. It was really cool, especially when you've got some very talented musicians. And I know that I've seen live presentations on social media from How to Train Your Dragon, where the movie is shown live, but then the score is performed live by a full orchestra. So you get to watch the movie, but listen to the music that's being performed live instead of, in the track with the theater. So I thought that was a cool idea too. So I don't know what you could do, but I feel like there'd be a lot of musical options for stuff like this.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of professional performances of video game music in the past, and a couple of like film music ones, but the Final Fantasy Distant Worlds concert was a thing that a friend of mine took me to for my birthday a few years ago now. But yeah, that had a whole breadth from across all of the Final Fantasy games. There are 20 plus of them at this point, including all of the spin-offs and whatnot. So there's a lot of music to pick from there. I think it's really interesting with Minecraft being like a very popular game and having a breadth of music, but it all being from the same game experience as opposed to multiple games in a series. Then like there's a bit of variation there. I suppose that there could be some music put in from like Minecraft Dungeons and Minecraft Legends, and those I think have a bit more action-oriented music compared to Minecraft, which feels a lot like, ambience and peace and melancholy and loneliness kind of gets put into the music. So the music tends to be a more downbeat compared to the usual sort of film music stuff that orchestras are going to be playing, where there's at least one, Captain America piece or something like that that's going to really kind of get the heart rate going. I feel like it's going to be a very different experience if you put Minecraft music in an orchestral environment and have people go to like a concert hall to enjoy it. Not that the music would be bad for that environment necessarily, it'll just be different to what I think people's typical expectations would be. Could be a great trip for schools though. Like, what better way to have a music class field trip to get the kids to go and see like Minecraft music performed and get interested in that. So to go back through the back catalog of what's there and what I think would be good for a live ensemble, there are a few things that I think I would enjoy live, but I don't know quite how they would pull it off because some of the instruments would be synthetic. And so it's whether they transpose those onto real-life instruments or they play the synths in live and have people, either triggering things on a computer live or, playing stuff in using a keyboard, like a MIDI keyboard input or something. But I think Aria Math, which is the Gamelan sounding one, has a lot of like steel drum sounding kind of percussion from C418's Minecraft Volume Beta, I think that one's from. But yeah, that'll be a really good track. Hagstrom, the one I mentioned earlier, is the very kind of music box, peaceful kind of the sound that I think of when I think of Minecraft. I think arrangements of the Cat music disc along with the companion track Dog from Minecraft Volume Alpha, those would both be really good, although they are very synth heavy. So I think it'd be really fun for them to have like a string arrangement or something, like with an entire string section playing this joyous melody. And then I think Alpha from Minecraft Volume Beta is probably the best one to be played in a live setting because it's got a lot of real instruments, or at least the virtual like instrument versions of a string quartet, a horn section, that kind of stuff. Is the one that sounds most like we're going on an adventure, as though it's like a film soundtrack. Has this very kind of sweeping section, lots of crescendos and then quieter moments and contemplative piano. It all sort of like bundles all of the Minecraft themes into one piece, really. I think on the flip side, Stahl, the music disc, which is the kind of jazzy sounding one with the kind of brush drums and the bass line and the kind of like slightly off-tune sounding flute solo, I think that'd be really fun. I think it's even like a recorder or something. But I think that would be really funny as like an interlude and just like a cheeky one to throw in there between the more orchestral numbers. I think Axolotl from the Update Aquatic soundtrack would be really great, because that's got this sort of underwater feel to it, like a lot of kind of synth pads and swells and like kind of mimicking the sounds of the ocean and that sort of like muffled sensation that you get when your head is underwater. Like it very much feels like you're underwater hearing it. And so yeah, that from like C418's tracks, and then anything from Lena Raine and Kumi Tanioka's Caves and Cliffs soundtrack. I think Stand Tall especially is one of my favorites. I put that in my Minecraft videos all the time. One More Day is another track that's kind of similar, that has a very kind of optimistic and upbeat. I consider that the start of Minecraft's music's turn towards things being more about like optimism and exploration and adventure rather than loneliness and trying to make the most out of this desolate world. So I think those, Bromeliad and Featherfall by Aaron Sheroff, and then Airy, which is another Lena Raine track from the Wild Update. I think those would probably be my picks for a sort of an orchestral set list if you wanted to watch this stuff live. I think, though, on a more mundane level, on a bit of a down note, unfortunately, I do wonder how difficult it would be for them to arrange an official Minecraft soundtrack performance like that, because I think there's been some disagreements between Mojang Studios since they were bought by Microsoft and C418, because he like retains the rights to sell the Minecraft soundtracks independently, and so I'm not certain what rights they have over like distribution of the music besides its use in the video game. And I think some of it did appear in the Minecraft movie, so maybe they figured out some of the rights to that, or maybe there was a clause in the old contract or something. But yeah, I get the sense that the two of them have had a falling out, and so if there was an officially licensed Minecraft concert, I don't know if C418's music would be part of it without some kind of further renegotiation of the rights. And I'm not sure if that's something either side wants to really get into right now.
You mentioned jazz, and something that I think would be really cool would be kind of like a lounge jazz adaptation of some Minecraft tracks for like you're out at the pub or a cocktail bar with some friends and someone's playing some jazz music on a piano in the background and you're just kind of like, this sounds familiar. Like, I feel like that some of the tracks would work really well for that kind of adaptation because they are kind of meant to be background. They're meant to be like melodic but unobtrusive,
And there's a lot of stuff that is based in piano melodically anyway, so the kind of stuff that piano players could get their hands around, as opposed to, I think, when you're composing digitally, you don't have to think as hard about the limitations of an instrument and what like people's hands can stretch to if they're on a piano keyboard, for example.
Right.
So I do think there's some stuff that digital composers can get away with that real instrument composers can't, but the best digital composers are the ones who are very aware of those limitations, and if they break the rules, it's in very specific circumstances. So I expect like a lot of the composers who work on Minecraft now will have actually played the melodies in themselves to get the expression and the timing of notes instead of like clicking them into the stuff on a composition software. So I imagine that they will be well aware of the pitfalls of that and what's possible to perform live and what is not. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it might have been for the Celeste soundtrack, but I have seen video online of Lena Raine performing some of her music live with like a small ensemble. But I think with stuff like Celeste, it was, again, digital music. It was a bit more kind of that 8-bit sound set, kind of like old school Nintendo kind of sounds, because it's a pixel platformer. So I think maybe it was easier to do that with a small ensemble than the kind of sweeping orchestral feel that works like it feels like it'd work best for Minecraft.
The other thing that comes to mind is school concert bands. So if any of our listeners are teachers or music teachers and know of a school concert band performing some Minecraft music, let us know. I think that would be really fun to listen to.
I bet, yeah, like that'd be a really fun challenge, I think, for a music teacher. Like, but again, a great way of getting the kids involved and interested is like they've all probably grown up hearing this soundtrack, so yeah, could definitely add to it for them.
Our next email comes in from Adam C. Make the XP/locator bar optional. Hi, Johnny and Joel. Per the discussion on episode 349, started by Mr. Halian's email, I have some thoughts to offer. What if instead of the game making the player have either the XP bar or the locator bar, it was an option left up to the player in the world settings menu when creating a new world? That way, as Joel stated, kids wouldn't be at risk of being found if they didn't want to be. Of course, there would have to be a warning or something for people joining a public server that has that feature activated. But what about the locator bar in single-player worlds? It would function the same as in multiplayer worlds, but instead of showing where the players were located, it tracked the location of boss mobs like the Warden, Wither, and Ender Dragon. It would help the player know their proximity to those dangerous mobs and potentially better help them navigate while avoiding attacks. Adam got lost while trying to find Johnny and Joel using the locator bar. Send help, please.
We're here. I'm here. Yeah. He's there.
Yeah.
Nice. But yes, we no. I think that there is now a command for it. The /locator bar command. I think you can toggle it true or false in game rules, and that's obviously not something that the average player is going to have access to when they join a server. But that's obviously by design. If it's an opt-in or opt-out thing for the server, not necessarily for individual players. But as far as like when creating a world in the world settings menu, I don't know if it's toggleable from the page of settings where you have like spawn mobs, spawn phantoms, spawn wardens, like those things can all be toggled individually via a graphical interface. But I think you can just do /locator bar as a game rule and it toggles it on or off, which makes it easy enough for people to enable it for, let's say, mini games or some sort of server-wide treasure hunt or whatever, or PvP match, but then you can turn it off again after that. And then waypoints can be set up, I think, individually, and the colors can be changed and things. But I do believe now at this stage it is possible to toggle the locator bar. If it wasn't before, it is now.
Yeah, and some of these emails, I should point out, I didn't note this one, but some of these are from the last month or so. So sometimes the email comes in depending on what we've covered and what's been available. I mean, this one was talking about episode 349, but like some of the emails we do get, like they'll be talking about like a Ghast ability and like it's been fixed in an update or there's been a new thing. But I do like the idea of a locator bar popping up during a boss fight. I think that's kind of fun. I think that part of the Ender Dragon challenge is seeing it against the dark void sky of the end. So like it might make that a little bit easier, but like that could also be like a difficulty setting. Like if you go into the Ender Dragon fight on a higher difficulty, maybe the locator bar is not there. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's just not an option to add it. But I I'm wondering if we could even use the locator bar in survival for higher value mobs like wither skeletons or pre-king or ghasts, or does that just negate the challenge? Like I wonder where the comfort level is for players that like either don't like PvE or find PvE too challenging or too scary, depending on how old you are. Like, I feel like there could be some uses for it there, but I think that's probably going to be left up to mods or data packs or servers with specific settings, mini games. I think the locator bar in a minigame could add some really fun stuff for locating mobs and things like that. Like if you picked up something in like a minigame map available on Marketplace, where if you have this item, then all skeletons or all zombies or all creepers or whatever are going to show up on your locator bar. And if your challenge is like collect as much gunpowder as possible or bones or whatever, then like you would then have an advantage if you have that item. And then, but if you have that item, maybe you are also shown on the locator bar, which makes you a target, right? So you have an advantage in the menu game, but you also have a big target painted on your back with the other people trying to get you to get the thing that you have, So there could be some potential there, but I think it's probably going to be mostly on extended Minecraft experiences, not so much in the vanilla game.
Yeah, I think I see the commands for this one on the Minecraft wiki do say that you can set team colors, and I think if you assign a mob to a team, then it will show up on the locator bar. I'm not sure if that's just mobs that are on your team or if that's mobs that can be assigned to other teams as well. But all you'd need would be a repeating command saying, like, if a wither skeleton spawns, assign it to the black team or whatever, and then a black icon would show up on your locator bar to determine where the wither skeletons were. So there's like a couple of things like that you could feasibly do with it. And that could very easily be just a data pack you drop into a vanilla world if you wanted it to function that way. So there's possibilities there for sure. I do think tracking the location of bosses like the dragon and the wither would make a lot of sense. As far as the warden goes, I think it's part of the intended experience of the warden that you don't know where it is, because that's the horror vibe that they're going for. And like if it's limiting your vision, but you can still effectively see what direction it's in, that's sort of like giving a little bit too much back, I feel, for that experience. But yeah, that's kind of part of what makes it scary. I was wondering if, similar to spectral arrows giving that glowing effect so you can see visually where something is, if you could have something like a locator arrow. I'm thinking like a Hawkeye thing where you attach like a GPS tracker to something if you shoot at it with an arrow.
Yeah.
But like that kind of thing where you fire a USB stick at it and it could have an effect that sort of briefly adds it to the locator bar so you can track its location, and then when the arrow despawns after a minute or whatever it is, the potion effect effectively could wear off. This has been my long-standing issue with spectral arrows, because by default boss mobs, which include just the Ender Dragon and the Wither, are immune to all potion effects. And that includes glowing, even though glowing is only a potion effect available using commands or spectral arrows. You can't brew it into a potion. But that means that the two mobs that you can't one-shot with a bow, I mean, there's a couple of others like Ravagers and Iron Golems and stuff, but anything where the glowing effect would be useful because they're often quite difficult to see, you can't affect them with glowing. So spectral arrows are just arrows in that context. And so I do kind of wish that they'd make an exception for glowing, but I think having a locator arrow or something like that could really expand the functionality of the locator bar, especially for people in single-player experiences who wouldn't get to see it otherwise. I wonder if perhaps this could even be a use for the fletching table. So maybe there's some functionality there that could be found later, but either way, I think we'll move on from this one and on to Finn S's email. Finn S writes in about quality of life features. Hi, Pix and Joel. In recent updates, I've been enjoying the many quality of life changes that Mojang has been making, such as the ability to press the spacebar while in the crafting interface to refresh the last recipe used. However, I think there are still many features that could be added to make the game even better. The most notable of these for me would be the ability to shear vines to stop their growth, similar to glowberries. What potential quality of life features would you guys like to see added to the game? Finn was killed by a spider while collecting string to stop his vines from growing.
Well, I think it's worth noting that you can stop vine growth with a game rule. We use it on the Citadel, so there is a way to stop it, although it's not like in-game. You can set that up before you start your world, or if you have admin purpose, then you can enter in the command and stop it in-game as well. It does mean you have to rethink any kind of vine farm because they don't grow like they would normally. But it does make them a lot easier to decorate with, and you're not constantly walking into places that have vines that you have to shear away to like get through a doorway or whatever. So that's why we have it turned off on the Citadel. But you do have to just adjust how you get vines. What I do is whenever I'm low on jungle wood, I don't just chop down the tree. I first trim all the vines. Same thing with mangrove. So any chance that you have to harvest mangrove trees or jungle trees, you can just get extra vines that way. And I kind of like keep them in a shulker box for when I need them. So the odd time I need to actually decorate with a vine is taken care of, because I no longer have to use vines to make mossy cobble. I use moss for that, which is way easier to get. So vines, as far as their use cases, is a lot narrower now. And so I agree. I think it would make sense in game to have the shears trim the vines, but it's not something you have to do. But for me, and this is less of a quality of life thing, I also didn't want to retread some of the things that we've talked about on the show before, but top of mind because of what I've been doing lately in Minecraft is giving players more options to do custom decorating. I think that would be a kind of a good mix of either quality of life feature or even just like feature. So placing some items in the world as models instead of sprites. So books, food, ingots. It would be really cool to be able to just place those on a flat surface as like a block or something. And especially if it allowed you to put them on walls. So for example, like an ingot on a wall could look like a button in a sci-fi build. You know, like there's a bunch of different things that you could do there. Placing some items or blocks on vertical or horizontal surfaces. So setting something like a fence up against a wall, and instead of it connecting the way that it does now, having the bottom of the fence touch the wall. Similar to how a chain works if you put it on a wall. Shields and weapons being able to be put on walls somehow. Shields, I think, are a little bit more obvious. Weapons, maybe not so much. But that's the kind of thing where hanging some of these things or placing some of these things on a wall, not in an item frame, I think would be useful. And then additional utility tools. So things like knives, plates, bowls, and cups. I know that's kind of a very specific request, but we open portals with magic in Minecraft. And apparently we eat everything with our hands. So it would be kind of nice, because as decorating the kitchen goes, like, I mean, I don't have a knife. I'd have to kind of create a bunch of different little sprites into a knife shape if I really wanted one. The closest I've come is taking the sprite of an axe and using an armor stand to embed it in a log to make it look like someone has like a hatchet that they've just left near a wood chopping block. But that doesn't work when you do it with a sword, you know, in the kitchen. It feels strangely out of place and doesn't read at all as a knife. And so when it comes into either, I would say modern settings, but also just like medieval kitchens and things like that, like there's no cutlery decoration. There's no place to store that kind of stuff. And I've seen, I think it was Whip that I first did it, retexturing Minecraft paintings to look like utensils hanging on the wall as part of a kitchen decor. And so it's possible with some resource packs to kind of get there, but I would like to see some more smaller objects be placeable in the game. And I think that with the creative minds that are out there, it wouldn't just be, you know, a plate for a plate, because like you could use a plate for all kinds of things depending on how you're decorating something in Minecraft. That could be used for, you know, eyeballs in a large sculpture. Like there's just a whole bunch of stuff that you could do with them.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think it would be great to have more decorative stuff. And I think my principal thought with this was similar and sort of maybe like a halfway to this, because you're already working with the armor stands and armor statues data packs on the Citadel. I don't have access to any of that in the Minecraft Survival Guide and would love to do more with armor stands, not necessarily to the extent where I'm rescaling stuff and making the armor stands invisible and making them float and having these kind of sculptural things. I would just be happy having them have arms, and that's a Bedrock parity thing. That's not even too far away from something we could have in Java Edition. They just don't naturally spawn with arms, and I think it's very strange that you have to have a command to do that in Java Edition. So I think I saw this suggestion on the Minecraft Reddit a little while ago. If you have an armor stand, either craft it together with or use a stick on it, it just adds the arms for you. Mm-hmm. And like you're adding another stick into it, but you're doing it in a tactile way if you're just adding a stick onto an armor stand that's been placed in the world, and then it gives it arms that you can position, whatever equipment that a player could hold, or it can hold a book or whatever. And I would be so much happier with that, just having, armor stands being able to like hold a shield. And then some ability to pose them would be really nice, but there are preset poses you can cycle through on Bedrock Edition. So again, if they just bring that into parity with Java Edition, I'd be a lot happier with the experience of armor stands, which is something I'm already quite happy with. If anyone who's seen my like old school tutorials where I was just making all these little armor stand details, you can do a lot with them. It's a surprising amount. Even just concealing them inside a block, if the arm is like holding something that could more or less function as an item on top of a surface. Aside from that, I had a hard time thinking of this because they have really fulfilled a lot of the quality of life things that I've wanted changed. The ability to hit space to refill a crafting recipe is another thing that I absolutely love about the recent changes. And yeah, like shift-clicking crafting recipes and things like that. It's made manual crafting a lot easier recently, especially after the advent of the crafter. But I think the one thing that I'm still looking out for is something like a dedicated spyglass key. I love the spyglass. I think it's a great addition to have in the game. I really like being able to zoom in from stuff. I also really like my hotbar to stay as it is and only have room to swap in and out a couple of blocks. I really want the ability to get tools back into my hotbar from my inventory. Something like pick block that works for something that isn't a block, that works for other items and like stacks of food and things like that. If it were possible to do that, limit the amount that you have to open your inventory to get some of that stuff, especially with the range of tools that we have now and things like the spyglass or tridents or things popping up occasionally so that more stuff gets added. I do think that would be enormous for quality of life for players, because the less time you spend in your inventory, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, that'd be on my wish list, and I can't honestly think of that many other things that Mojang hasn't already addressed in some form or another, but would really be interested to hear from other players about this. So that seems like a great email to follow up on if you're interested in emailing the show.
I don't remember whether I've talked about this on the show, but I 100% have talked about it on a Twitch clip, even a Twitch highlight maybe, and talking about the inventory and the tools. It was the idea of having like a pinwheel. So like if you have tools in your inventory, your number one slot on your hotbar, you could hold down a key. I'm not sure what that key would be. And then it would pop up with a selection wheel of all the different tools that are in your inventory, and you could just switch. So yeah. Sword, axe, shovel, pickaxe, whatever you want, whatever you had in your inventory, you could switch to that, just with that one space. Because ultimately, you don't need them all in your inventory. Like a lot of times, I think we have a pickaxe, an axe, and a shovel on space 1, 2, and 3 as we're going around the world doing stuff, because you never know which you're going to use, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to switch. But that takes up a third of your hotbar. And so my idea was to have a pinwheel. And that's something that they do in Satisfactory very well. And it works not just for the tools, it works for building blocks and different things that you're using. So if you have like a conveyor belt and you want a different tier conveyor belt, holding down, I think it's the E key, will bring up a selection wheel of tiers 1 through 6, so that you only have to have conveyor belt on your hotbar, and all the subcategories of conveyor belt you can access through like an on-screen pop-up. So it helps with that like inventory tree that I think Minecraft is encroaching on with the restrictions and quality of life there, right?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. If not for the vanilla game, then I'm sure like mods would have a great time with making like a radial selection wheel for building or for tools. I think that's great.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody has done a radial wheel in a mod. Has to be. I feel like I've seen it somewhere.
I think the only problem with it is that circles in Minecraft are heretical, so you'd have to find a way to make it square. Outside of that, like, fine, go for it.
Yeah. The next email is from Slippers, landscape artist in our community, and the subject is Stunt Serum. Hi, Pix and Joel. I recently showed my girlfriend around in my Minecraft server and found it funny seeing what she was interested in, as she has never played the game before. I found it amusing that her main idea was a stunt serum that would keep the baby animals small. After hearing the email and discussion on this topic in episode 338, I thought I would actually write in with this idea. This could be a potion that, if brewed, could be used multiple times with a durability bar. It could also be used to quote-unquote wax crops and plants at different stages of growth. Let me know what your thoughts are. Slippers died of cuteness because he was surrounded by so many baby animals. I can tell you that is possible. after my weekend doing puppy yoga. I could absolutely see that. And I think T-minus 10 seconds until the community renames this as cute juice in the hot bar for your potions for stunting growth. I don't know if stunt serum is the best name. That might be a little bit negative. It might have to be restructured in some way. But what I was thinking of, because I am all on top of this, like I think this is a great idea, but maybe it could be something to do with time, like freezing time. We have magic in Minecraft, and so freezing time would be, I think, a better way to frame that. And I love the idea that Slippers took the want for the animals to stay cute, but then also apply the same thing, the same item in Minecraft to crops, flowers and things that you don't want to grow past a certain stage. Because I think pitcher plants is a really good example of like, it has some really cool stages that look like other things, but we can't stop it from growing. And so to do that would be really, really cool. And when you freeze mobs, like I'm wondering if that could also be added to adult mobs. Like it could be used as like a crowd control in a hostile mob situation. Maybe they don't freeze indefinitely. Maybe there's a time limit if it's like a skeleton or a zombie, and after a while they'll continue to chase you. Or if it's a passive mob, then maybe it's indefinite. It's like you said, like waxing something, it could freeze it in place indefinitely. But then like, does that remove some of the life of your farm? Your sheep wandering around, your pigs wandering around. It would just allow you to not have to fence them in with specific blocks to keep them from wandering outside of the area that you want. So I don't know what could be done there, but I think that's a neat idea in terms of like, using a Minecraft mechanic like potion brewing to do something that would then allow, again, more decorative or RP control of the player.
I hope I'm not the only person who heard the word stunt serum and thought this was just something you could throw on a mob to make it do a flip or something. Like that's what I was imagining. I was like, it's going to drive through the wall in a car or something. I was thinking Michael Bay level of stunts as opposed to, stunting something's growth. But yeah, I agree. The name could use a little work, but outside of that, I think a cool idea, and definitely something that the community wants in general is the ability to have more control over life around them. I'm curious whether this hasn't been a thing for a while just because Mojang doesn't want us to have that level of control. Is there a lesson to be learned there that you don't have control over the passage of time? And how much power is too much power as far as Minecraft goes? But like, I think this has a lot of potential. I think it feels different enough from how regular potions are used that I'd be inclined to make it a different item. But like, this is a very cool solution to the feature that you want. And I think whether it's like a splash potion or a potion that you feed effectively to the animals the way you would feed like crops to them, or even that could be a combination of stuff, right? You could feed them a different type of food, or you could feed them food that was enchanted in some way to prevent them from growing up. In a sort of inverse of the mechanic way, you feed them their favorite food so that they grow up faster. I'm curious if that could be a solution to it instead of it being something related to potion brewing, because while potions do feel like a great way of introducing like magical effects and faster travel and like poison and swiftness and haste and that kind of stuff, I think we're used to those having time limits or like a radius of effect, and we're also used to them being drinkable by the player or affecting the player in some way when you like get splashed with a splash potion. And I don't think any of this would have an effect on the player, or if it did, the effect would probably be a negative one that you wouldn't want, and so you'd have to be fairly careful about how you used it. But I think that skews too far away from what we expect potions to be used for, because all of them, I'm pretty sure, have an effect on the player. And for it to be a type of potion that doesn't, feels like it's a little bit outside of the remit of potions as a mechanic. Outside of that, though, I do think the idea is a really sound one. And so, yeah, I would want to make it like some kind of enchanted food, or, you dip the food or you craft the food in a lingering potion or something like that, and that's what makes it happen. Or you do something with cauldrons even to like revive cauldron mechanics for those of us who can't do a great deal with them in Java Edition. And I think that could be a really interesting way of introducing this mechanic while making it something that didn't confuse players who are used to potion brewing mechanics already.
I like the idea of a time potion or time item that you use on yourself to then fast forward the day. Because I do it with screenshots sometimes on the server because like I want a certain time of day and I might just like use the admin command to like advance the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be really interesting because we can fast forward the night by sleeping if you want to go through it. But there's nothing we can really do to advance the day if you wanted to. And so it would be kind of neat to throw a splash potion or use a time item on yourself and have you, the player, freeze as like, the sun goes overhead. In Minecraft, like quite quickly, like the time lapse that you see like in people's videos, like that could be kind of fun. I don't know. I see what you mean though about like separating it away from a potion, or like coding food or having something like maybe it could be. I mean, we have a lot of odd stuff in Minecraft, like suspicious stew. Like maybe it's something you've got to craft, or I'm thinking like Alice in Wonderland with like weird mushrooms. Like I mean, something from the Nether or something from an end, update, like some sort of vegetation from an end update that could do the same thing. That could be kind of fun too.
Potion of time set. I also really like the mental image of you throwing a potion at a sheep, expecting it to stay a baby sheep, and then suddenly it's nighttime around you and you go, what happened?
Yeah.
Where did the day go? I need to find my bed. So that's where we're going to leave it for today's episode, but lots to think about there. Thank you so much for all of those emails. Once again, Joel will have the email address for you shortly if you're interested in emailing the show and contributing to the chunk mail, which we do read every week aside from these chunk mail dispensers, so there's always room for email in the show. That's going to be it for our episode, though. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff that we've talked about today over at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show is composed by me, and The Spawn Chunks is proud, as ever, to be a listener-supported podcast. If you're getting some value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? I will once again tease the fact that you can see pictures of the puppies Joel got to hang out with this weekend. Definitely a good time to sign up and be a patron. You can find us at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. Pledging at any level gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat where you can see those puppy pictures. You can also participate in monthly Minecraft Hangouts. You can listen to the show live when we record it in Discord every Monday. And we have other events throughout the year as well. We currently have 287 patrons, which is steady on from last week. We would love to climb that up to 300 again. Special thanks go out to our content engineers, who this week we have got a new one to add to the ranks. That penguin dude has just upgraded to a content engineer Patreon, so thank you so much for that. We thank you along with Hunter555, Jumbo Sale, Mindtrip Media, Party Voyager, and Yitz for all of your support on this episode.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. You can find us on social media at The Spawn Chunks. New episodes are published on Mondays on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, and the video version goes out on Spotify and on YouTube. The RSS feed is linked at thespawnchunks.com. The patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page. That's where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast. And as we've mentioned, you can email the show at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com.
My name is Johnny, but online I go by Pixelriffs. You can find most of what I do at youtube.com/Pixelriffs, where right now I'm on the Misadventures SMP, and I'm also still playing through Craftmine, the April Fool's snapshot from this year. You can also find me streaming 3 days a week on Twitch, where I do behind-the-scenes work for my YouTube series, and I'm currently playing Claire Obscure Expedition 33 as the bonus game. Having a really good time with that. I'm also the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search. And aside from that, I'm at Pixelriffs on both Blue Sky and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
You can listen to my other podcast about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment, The Citadel Cafe, on your favorite podcasting platform. That is usually out monthly. We're running late this month because of scheduling and other issues, with me being under the weather the first part of May. I'm Joel Duggan on social media, very easy to find. Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I stream Tuesday through Saturday right now, and putting the pedal to the metal on the West Hill build. So going through a lot of the interior designs, as I mentioned. So if you want some tips and tricks on either data packs or some of the vanilla tricks that I use for decorating, then pop on by twitch.tv/JoelDuggan.
Thanks for visiting The Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, and that's a quality of life feature.